Good morning, everyone. It's Carpo here. Another early morning video. I first spoken the words of the day, so let me clear the frogs from my throat. I woke up this morning with one of those vivid memories of a dream stuck in my head. And it's one of those ones where, first, I used to be a lucid dreamer, so I would write down in my dream journal every day my dreaming. And after a while I started to realize that my dreams need to be as part of my subconscious to work things out. So I just kind of let them do their thing. And I don't force the issue. I don't try to remember everything. But this morning when I woke up, I had this very, very strong memory in my mind of a dream. And it was one of those moments where you can't actually remember anything about the dream, but you remember the feeling in it. And as I laid there thinking about it, I continued to process it. And then I got up, took a shower, laid on the couch, I still thought about it, and decided to make a video about it. And I never make videos about my dreams because, well, they're very difficult to interpret. Each person has their own way of interpreting their own dreams. And I think that only the individual can interpret their own dreams, unless they're very unaware and then they can have somebody else do it. But the person has to know them well is the point. You can't just go to some random person and say, I had this dream. So anyway, on to the dream. What I remembered of it was this. We were in this giant room, like this big rectangular room. I can't really remember the specifics of how it looked, other than it was a little bit musty in places. You'd get the feeling that there were groups of people kind of in various areas, and there were chairs in there. And everyone's doing their own thing. It's almost like a little society in this big room. No windows, just a closed room. And all of a sudden, this hostess comes in, an air hostess, and says, we're having problems or something to the effect of we're going to be landing the plane. And in order to land safely, all the people from the upper cabins or areas that are running around on the upper floor need to come down and get into their seats to balance out the plane. And it was a really strange thing to me because that was pretty much all I remember about it. And as I thought more and more about it, I started to see the metaphors in it as this is the way I perceive it, that the plane represents society as a whole. All the different areas on the plane, where you would even see little groups with like chickens and stuff, like different cultures within this area, and everybody's doing their own thing. And the hostess comes in and says everybody needs to sit in their seats and be organized, and all the people that are running around upstairs, like the way I pictured it in my head in the dream was just that there was nothing up there but just people just running around having fun. And so the metaphor of the plane was society, the people in society. The idea of the windowless plane was the idea that, or the fact that I didn't even know it was a plane until she told me it was a plane, the hostess. It brings to mind the idea that we're all going somewhere, but we're not quite sure where. There's no windows to look out of, and we don't know where we're going to end up. And the funniest metaphor of it was that until everybody gets on the same level, we're going to continue to, I guess, circle, metaphorically, in our airplane. We're not quite sure what we want, but we have to balance it all out. We have to balance ourselves out, and we have to get the people who are up there on that other level, or maybe not up in the sense of above, but just in a different place, to get in our seats, to get our shit together, to pull society out of its own asshole. Pardon my language, but, it's getting ludicrous out there. To, the point where one day, sure, I can have a very positive day, and most days I have a positive day, but I don't ignore the inconsistencies in society. There's a lot of war, there's a lot of murder, there's a lot of rape, there's a lot of everything negative that you can possibly imagine, but it's a very small percentage of the whole. 1 to 2% of people may be fighting consistent battles. But none of us really have an agreed point on where we're going. I mean, I don't I don't see society ever pulling together. I don't think those people on that plane will ever come down to the other level, only because that means that they have to sit down in their seats. And sitting down in your seats means that you come to terms and agree to a degree that we all need to go the same direction. It makes it very difficult with religion, where, say, they believe the afterlife is more important than this life, and then you have a lot of people who are believe that this life is the only life, and to come to a consensus about what's important is nearly impossible. Maybe that plane will spin out of control. You know, society is we're nothing special in this day and age. The only thing that sets us apart from culture that we know of in the past that have collapsed is the fact that we have more technology, that we could blow ourselves up 50 times over. And this isn't as scary to me as it may be to a lot of other people. The idea of nuclear war, to me, it would be it could be a worldwide catastrophe. It could destroy everything, but to worry about it is futile, because there's nothing that you and I can do about nuclear war. I mean, people went through the 80s and early 90s with this whole anti-nuclear deal, and they signed treaties and claimed to disarm their weapons, and we claim to disarm our weapons, and we all know it's bullshit. Russia still has plenty of nukes, the US still has plenty of nukes, and now all the other countries are getting them too. I bring up nuclear war only because it's the one possibility that we seem to almost push aside now. Like, it's over, the 80s are over, the Cold War's over. And now we can worry about viruses and Nibiru and things like this, but we have quite the arsenal. But I guess my point being that the only thing that sets us apart from other societies that have collapsed are the fact that we have multiple ways to kill ourselves quickly. Whereas when Rome collapsed, it takes quite some time to affect the rest of the world, But it did. The trade routes, everything was traded. The Silk Road, all these different trade routes in history that have been affected by collapses of societies. And people would start over. And people will start over again after us, but I don't know, I feel like we seem to think that we've got it all figured out, and then as a society, and now we're starting to realize we don't, and we're asking ourselves, is it too late? And I guess my view on it is that this is just a cycle. It's just a repeating pattern that happens over and over as we enter the age of decadence and people begin to want more and more material goods. And I guess I can't really just say it's material goods, because material goods aren't the problem. We're here to experience and enjoy ourselves. It's when one life becomes more important than all the others is when things become a problem. And in the past, when a leader would get to that point, his people would often maul him and start over. So a leader knew that if he made a mistake, there would be a revolution. Even in this country, Thomas Jefferson said we need to have a revolution every generation to keep the government honest. And but now we have our leaders hiding behind concrete and lead walls, underground bunkers. There's no way out. There's no way to take our city back, take our Rome back from those people, other than to wait for something to happen. And that's what a lot of people are doing. They're looking for the end times. They're looking for something to pull us out of, something to take our leaders out for us, something to make us start over, to force our plane to land. The people from the upper level aren't coming down. Nobody's taking their seats. It's just out of control. And we don't even realize that we have the option and the strength and the ability to change things. We feel powerless as individuals. But to come together on a group on that level, that's the only way that we're ever going to balance out this crazy plane. So we ask a question, I guess, my final question, which would be, that have to come from some higher power? You know, would we be better off if some form of a God did present itself and say, hey, I do exist. This is what you're supposed to do. Now you know. Would it matter? Probably not. These have been claims all through history that this is exactly what God has done through various prophets and whatnot. Some people believe it, some people don't. We're never going to get a consensus reality on reality. Ever. Ever. I don't think it's possible. The only way to get everyone to see things your way is through forced fear, and this is what the church has done through using things like Satan and hell. This is what the government has done by using ideas like, send you to prison for gathering in groups to protest what is wrong. There's always a negative attribute or something that's going to happen to you if you don't do things just the right way. The problem is there's no consensus on what is the right way. And so goes life. Are we in a tailspin? I'll sip my coffee and contemplate that idea. I was a very negative person when it came to the future of society. I've always been a very positive person about life and my own life and my family and friends. But when it comes to the world in general, I just say, we're doing it to ourselves and something will happen, whether it's a virus or a meteor or whatever. It could be something chance or something we create. Who knows? There's no point in worrying about it, But eventually this society will end too. But I've changed that negative attitude over the years to think maybe we can pull our heads out. Maybe. Our heads aren't just in the sand, It's funny. Before I go, I'll say, that old saying, putting your head in the sand. I guess that came from, the idea that ostriches bury their head in the sand when they're scared. And I read something that said they don't actually do it because they're scared. They do it because something that has to do with the sand helping to clean off their face. I'd have to look more into it, but it just popped into my head, and I thought about that. You transfer that metaphor to the humans. You say maybe when we're putting our head in the sand, we're not doing it to hide either. We're doing it to kind of clean our minds off, or to clean our face rather. So when we pull our heads out of our asses, we have a better perspective. That's the hope. I wish you all the best of days, and it's good knowing you all. It's good to know the few people out there who do care, and I meet people every week on YouTube who understand where I'm coming from and know that you need a little bit of everything. You don't abandon ego, you don't attach to ego, you don't abandon the world, you don't attach to the world, you don't abandon materialism or attach, you don't abandon religion or attach to it. Everything is a balance, everything's a flow. And you ride the waves between the extremes. And if you get stuck on the crest of a wave or a trough, just remember you will be lifted back up or back down again. It's just the way it is. It's the world we live in.